Hello, welcome to Sadok with Sandra. Sadok is Hebrew for just and righteous. Our mission here is to strengthen and to develop our community through education, elevation, and empowerment. Sadok is elevating our community. And we are here, Season 1, Episode 5, Straight Talk with Ed Ritter, candidate for the 47th House District. He's a former engineer. We're going to have honest insights and solutions for all Pennsylvanians. Join our podcast as we sit down with the former engineer and turned candidate dedicated to transparent, honest representation for all Pennsylvanians. Explore real solutions for pressing issues like infrastructure, job creation, education, and public safety. Gain valuable insights into the challenges facing Pennsylvania and hear a fresh perspective on what it takes to make positive impact in our communities. Tune in for a very candid conversation. Thank you, Ed, for joining Sadok with Sandra.
Well, thank you, Sandra, for having me.
So tell the community about yourself. Why are you running for the 47th?
I'm running for the 47th district because I miss middle of the road politics. I think back to our former state representative in this district, Keith Gillespie, and he was a Republican. He served us for 20 years, and he was a moderate York County Republican. And I would never have run in this race against Keith Gillespie. I just find the incumbent to be very, very far right on his positions, positions regarding women's health, positions regarding public education, positions about taxation and regulation in Pennsylvania, and I just thought that somebody should contest the election.
And that somebody is you.
And that somebody is me, yes.
If you don't have anybody else to step up, anybody else you can encourage to step up, then you're the one. You're the answer to the problem that you see.
Yep.
So tell us something about your family background. I think, I'm in his beautiful house, and you said you lived here for 10 years?
We've lived in this house for 10 years. My wife and I, we married in 2015, moved in here just before that. And I was born and raised in York County. Went to Dover High School, graduated in 1974. We just had our 50-year class reunion this past summer. My first wife was also a Dover grad. She died of cancer in 2012. And Connie and I got married in 2015 and moved up here from New Freedom.
So, and also tell us about the 47th district. What are the communities that you serve?
The 47th district runs from Conewaga Township in the west up through Manchester and East Manchester townships, and that includes the boroughs of Manchester and Mount Wolfe. It's the northern half of Springettsbury Township, which would be districts 2, 3, and 7. And then it's Hellam Township, which includes the boroughs of Hellam and Wrightsville down on the river.
What about your work experience and your background?
Well, I spent 40 years as a working engineer. I started off in the petroleum refining business in Texas, and I was in Texas for a couple of years, moved to Delaware in 1980, and after 5 more years in petroleum refining, took a job with a small consulting firm. We were doing energy engineering projects, so I did work in pulp and paper, and petroleum, and petrochemical, in chemical, and did that for a couple of years, and then the firm closed up shop when the founder died. So I was on unemployment for about 6 months, and was hired by McCormick and Company down in Hunt Valley, Maryland, where I was the the first process engineer that the company had hired, and that was after 95 years in business. They'd never had a process engineer before. So I went to work in the spice mill there and worked on projects involving black pepper, white pepper, cinnamon, red pepper, all the herbs, seed products, ginger, turmeric. We were doing a lot of global sourcing initiatives. So I was the principal process designer for spice mill that we built, grassroots spice mill in the south of India. So I was over there for throughout the construction period, and then for the startup, where we managed to start up and get every product that we had in our portfolio in spec delivered back to the United States. Had projects in Indonesia, Pakistan, and I left there in 1997, and I went to Starbucks Coffee in East Manchester Township, their large roasting plant there, and I was the maintenance and engineering manager throughout basically the build out of the plant. When I got there, they had 2 roasters, and when I left, they were up to 10 roasters. So that was my time with Starbucks. I served as a liaison for the construction and startup of their Europe, Middle East, and Africa coffee operation in Amsterdam. So I was there.
Through all those, did you actually travel?
I was a lot of places.
Okay. So how did that in any way influence your decisions on immigration and immigration issues that Pennsylvania may deal with?
Well, I know that there are smart, hardworking people all over the world, and I was privileged to work with a lot of good people. Like I say, India was the biggest project I had, but we had a very important project in Indonesia, cutting clean of cinnamon, and that was important because we helped to establish the Indonesian cooperative farming effort that they were able to get out from under the Chinese that had controlled the cinnamon trade out of Indonesia for a long time, and the Chinese were taking money more or less off the top. So by establishing the co-op relationship, it was much more profitable for the Indonesian farmers and growers.
Also, what you discussed so far of your employment background and being laid off, and I think you said on unemployment.
I was for a little while, yeah.
So, many people in the community are talking about wages, are talking about job security or the lack thereof.
Sure.
And also speaking about the cost of living.
Sure.
How will you address some of these things that everyday Pennsylvanians are facing in those issues in your position if you win it? When you win it?
When I win it. Well, I think some of the important things in terms of being able to navigate changes in your employment when an employer closes or employer moves. It's a real disruption to all the employees. So I think it's important to do everything we can to keep employers here in York County, and that involves when you do have a union agreement, being a cooperative, an honest broker with the employer to make sure that the employer maintains profitability at the same time the union workforce is getting strong wages and benefits, and a good cooperative relationship just makes things go smoothly and maintains employment. At the same time, there's an awful lot of open workplaces in York County, and that's kind of key, I think, to York County's appeal to employers from across the nation. People aren't hesitant to move here. I know Starbucks, when they look to build their roasting plant here, they were looking for an educated workforce. They were looking for something that had good logistics. So they were connected to the Port of Baltimore and the free enterprise zone so that they could, if they were bringing product in and processing it and then re-exporting, they didn't have to pay duties in and out. So all those things were very important to them, and they've really grown that operation over the years. I have no idea how many people they have employed out there right now, but in addition to the roasting plant, I know they have a standalone warehouse and distribution operation that was all under one roof when I was there, but now they've split out and they've got well over 1 million square feet and a pretty substantial workforce out there, I'm sure.
So just listening to you, that you've been involved in the private business sector for a while, obviously for decades.
Yes.
And so you are, or would you say, are you the typical politician?
I really doubt I'm a typical politician. I think most people get involved in politics in their 20s and 30s. Their typical first run for office will be somewhere in the 30 to 40 range, maybe even younger. I know my opponent is 37, I believe, and he's just completing his first term in office. So he went into office at the age of 35, and that was his first run for office. So, it makes it real easy for me to pledge that, I don't intend to serve more than 3 2-year terms. So that would be 6 years total. I've pledged I won't be running for any other office. So not state senate, not governor, not any federal offices. And I'm not looking to do any lobbying when I retire. We've been retired for 5 years and we've been having a great time. I just, like I say, the reason I got involved in politics in the first place was I was hoping somebody else would step up and I could just work in the background. But when nobody else did, I really felt it was important to contest a seat and bring my perspective, my long history in York County and my middle of the road perspective to the contest.
So you say 3 2-year terms because of the House of Representatives, you have to run every 2 years.
Yes.
But why 3 2-year terms? What do you believe that you can accomplish within that time that you could not accomplish if you just served one term?
Well, if I could accomplish the things I'd like to accomplish in one term and find somebody else to run for the seat, I'd be fine retiring after one term. I have no problems with that. I have a couple of things that I've said I'd like to accomplish, and I think the likelihood of getting them done as a freshman legislator in one term, if I could, I'd be happy to retire again.
What are the things that you want to accomplish?
Well, the first thing is I'd like to see Pennsylvania establish something kind of more or less at the forefront, I think, in terms of solid waste, reduction, and that would be to be able to bring, for example, personal water bottles into all the entertainment venues in the state. So that would include Citizens Bank Park in Philly, the Eagle Stadium. The link would include Penn State for football, basketball, volleyball, whatever. I think we would save, millions of containers of solid waste every year, and some of it certainly ends up in landfills. Much of it might be recycled, but and it would save fans money if you could bring in your water bottle and then refill it at a filling station or a water fountain inside. You could save money that way. So there's a couple of things there. That's the first thing.
So we'll get to the next things, but I just had a question in reference to the first issue. What I know about entertainment venues, concerts, other sporting events, they even take the top off of a water bottle, the cap off of a water bottle, in case somebody throws it. So then you don't have the weight of the water remaining in the bottle if they were to throw it at a player or entertainer. So if someone brought in their personal plastic or steel water bottle, it seems that they would consider that a safety hazard. Have you considered that?
I know they would consider it a safety
Okay.
hazard, but I think what you need to do is punish the behavior and not set
The
rules.
mechanism?
Yeah, and not set rules around, something that 99.9% of the people are going to bring in and use as they intend.
Mm.
If you wanted to make a weapon, you can make a weapon. I mean, I've seen the belt buckles that some people wear.
Well, that's true.
At the end of a 3 foot
Yeah,
the end of a 3 foot leash, they could do some damage with that.
Yeah.
So you could turn anything into a weapon.
Well, that's absolutely true. But I just particularly knew about the water bottles. Has been at so many rallies
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
recently with the political rallies, and I know the first thing they do is take off the caps if they give you a water bottle. So
Yeah.
and when you lifted up your container, I was like, that would probably cause some damage from their perspective.
Yeah, I think people, it has to be an empty water bottle, so you're not
Right.
bringing in something like
Right. Okay.
battery acid or
Right, or
something
alcohol or
something would
something
be
like
poisonous, something would be toxic,
Okay.
something alcohol. Empty water bottle.
Okay.
I think the instances of problems would be no worse than the instances of violence from let's say people who've had a little bit too much to drink at the venue and everything's purchased inside. Sometimes they get a little out of control.
And your goal is to reduce waste.
Reduce waste.
And I am not an expert in that. I've just heard that where we used to ship the waste is even running out of space.
Yeah, I know that engineers are working on being able to recycle a larger portion of plastics. In right here in York, CRDC has an operation that will recycle all plastics and basically convert it to filler for concrete.
Okay.
And we drop off our household plastics about twice a month. They charge us $2 a bag, and the amount of solid waste we put out at the curb is really reduced.
Say the name of that location again, just in case someone else wants to recycle as you do.
CRDC is in downtown New York. It's off Philadelphia Street at Eberts Lane near the VFW.
Okay.
CRDC takes household plastic waste, and for $2 a bag, you deposit it, and they convert 100% of that waste into material that's used in the construction trades.
Okay.
It's a filler for concrete primarily.
Wow. And then your other two initiatives.
The other two initiatives, the next one has to do with building stock, basically abandoned or what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, building stock that is no longer occupied. It's been on the market, distressed building stock. I'd like to see the state regulations allow municipalities to increase the taxes on abandoned properties, so that it encourages the owners to lower the leases, get the product back on or get the building back on the market, so you don't have these blighted buildings on the landscape. The poster child in this area to me has been the old Giant store out near West Manchester Mall. It's been vacant for at least 10 years, and it just sits there. And I think it could be converted into low-cost housing units, and would have people right there that would have plenty of employment opportunities nearby. At the mall, at literally dozens of buildings or businesses right along there. The UPMC Memorial Hospital is within easy walking distance from there. So I say just a lot of opportunities. There is grocery shopping nearby. There's retail. It's just would be an ideal opportunity to get that property back on the market and address housing issues at the same time.
So, Representative Carol Evans, when I spoke to her, she mentioned that as a state legislator, that they were working on changing the zoning rules to allow different uses for those buildings, because obviously that is zoned commercial,
Sure.
not residential. Now, when I hear you say that, because when I heard other people comment about that initiative that she raised, they were concerned with eminent domain, such as the state coming in and taking over private property. So, is her explanation for that initiative, for that bill that's being considered, was saying that it does not, is not through eminent domain, but is again in reference to changing the zoning. So maybe whoever owns Giant would be able to sell it to someone or use it in a different way. So for your proposal, would it be in line with the changing of the zoning, or is it more in line with eminent domain? And if so, why?
I would like to see it avoid eminent domain. I'd like to see it managed through the private landholders, and have, if you place enough tax incentives there to motivate a seller to drop their price. If it's not moving in the current market, it's not moving in the current market because the price is too high. They don't want to drop their price, and they'd rather the property sit, vacant, blighted. And if the price were dropping every year until it's sold, because the owners are having a higher and higher tax burden every year, the market, I would much rather see a market solution than a government imposed solution. And I certainly favor, mixed use development where you have both commercial and residential in the same area. It reduces traffic congestion, traffic flow. You don't need as many cars in and out of the area. If you've got people that are living there that can walk to work, can bike to work, can take a scooter to work or a bus, and there's plenty of employment opportunities there. I say that one would be pretty much ideal. There's another place right out here on East Market Street, right across from Dairy Queen. It's an old rambling brick 2-story building that's been boarded up for at least 10 years. As long as I've lived in this area, it's been boarded up. So getting those properties back on the market just improves the marketability of the properties that are adjacent to it. Right. Because nobody wants to develop and live in a house when you've got a vacant house right next door. It's just
same with businesses, right?
Same with businesses,
right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, blight is contagious.
Right.
And anti-blight should be similarly contagious.
Now, you said to continue to increase taxes every year to encourage them to sell.
That would be one option. Like I say, it's just a matter of I don't know exactly how that legislation might work. That might be a tough one to get through, but because I know everybody says, well, you put in a certain millage and that's what it is across the board. But if it were assessed at what the property value would be developed, I don't know how long it's been since any of those have been reassessed.
Right.
I bet because they're vacant, they haven't been reassessed in a long time. And certainly the market in 10 years has moved that property up in value if it were a usable property.
Right.
Yeah. Neither of those examples is usable as it is right now.
You spoke about potentially finding a way to encourage owners of blighted commercial property to be motivated to sell.
Correct.
Okay, so that way they can move the market. Now, to do that, though, I assume that you would be willing to have conversations with various stakeholders, like business owners, maybe even the local
Local
leaders,
municipality,
right?
absolutely, yes,
Exactly.
yeah,
To see what the effect of any of that would be. I'm trying to see who else may be an interested stakeholder. I'm sure there's from the municipality to the, like you mentioned, a particular mall.
right,
That was West Manchester Mall area,
yes,
right? So there may be other businesses within that mall, and who may have an interest. And this, as a state legislator, if you do make that proposal, that just would not have an effect on York. That would have an effect on, that would be a statewide
absolutely,
initiative.
absolutely.
So I don't know who else have advocates for businesses and realtors. I'm sure that as well. But would you be willing to listen or seek the impact on all those who may be affected?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But there's no doubt in my mind that getting getting blighted buildings out of the inventory and turning over that property would it would be a boon for construction companies. Anybody who rebuilds the property, it would be a boon to employment because you not only have the employment people, the workers doing the renovation work, but to the extent that some of that becomes residential, it starts to address the issues around the housing shortage and affordable housing shortage in particular. If you can bundle and have I'm thinking of the development near the Wegmans over in Lancaster County,
Okay.
where you've got the Wegmans and you've got the other retail establishments, and then you have the condos or apartments that surround the whole thing. You know, somebody can walk from their apartment down to Wegmans. They can either get their dinner or get supplies and cook their dinner. They can walk across to the movie theater. They can go get any number of things, and it's all right there in one location. So it helps to address some issues with suburban sprawl. Again, by having less traffic, less vehicle traffic, more foot traffic, and more local businesses. It can be small businesses. Wegmans isn't a small business, but there are smaller businesses there that may have only one or two locations, and it's a it's a win-win. Getting
Okay.
rid of blighted building stock is a total win.
And as a state legislator, that's what you always have to be able to argue your point.
Yes,
Argue your point
absolutely.
to the other legislators, argue your point to the community, argue why it's in their best interest, even if they may not have realized it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I believe, was that your second issue? What's your
That was my
third?
second issue.
Okay, what's your third
My
issue?
my third issue, and this one, bears directly on the passing of my first wife. She died of cancer in 2012.
I'm sorry to hear.
So my third one has to do with death with dignity legislation.
Okay.
Death with dignity it's been approved so far in 10 states, both conservative and more progressive or liberal states. Montana Montana is the reddest state I know of that's approved it, and it's one of the reddest states I can think of. But Montana, California, Oregon, New Jersey, Hawaii. So it's been approved in 10 states and the District of Columbia. There are four key points that need to be observed for somebody to be eligible. Number one, they have to be an adult. Number two, they have to be of sound mind. Number three, they have to be diagnosed terminal within 6 months. And number four, they have to be able to self-ingest the medication, the terminal medication. So those are the four safeguards.
So I understood. So when you initially said death with dignity, I
Yes.
did not understand, but is it euthanasia?
Yep. People will use the term euthanasia.
Okay.
People will use the term assisted suicide.
I've heard
And
that.
and while I understand that term, that's not the term that's in vogue right now. It used to be sponsored by the Hemlock Society, but they've since changed their name to be compassionate, death with compassion, death with dignity, any one of a number of things. But it enjoys support by both Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. Majority support, well over 60%. In certain parts of the country, it is supported by over 90% of the population. That's in the basically the upper Midwest. But it has majority support in every section of the country. It has majority support again across all racial groups. It's and the thing is, of course it's always optional. So if that is not for you, it's something that it won't be forced on anyone. That's totally. But I know how Vicky suffered with her cancer treatments, and I don't know that she would have taken. I don't know if she would have taken that option, but I think it would be a comfort to know that that option's available to anyone when they know when they know and the end is near, and the pain from the treatment is just so extreme. Yeah.
That was going to be my question of whether or not your wife,
Hmm.
Vicky,
Yes.
whether or not it was something that she sought but could not get.
She did not seek it.
Okay.
We did not talk about it. Now,
Hmm.
I would honestly say, we had she was in hospice care for the last 5 weeks of her life, and we had hospice nurses bringing in morphine on a regular basis, bringing in fentanyl patches on a regular basis, and God, if she had asked,
Hmm.
I could not have said no. But she never asked, I never
Hmm.
offered, and she passed. You know, when God wants you, God will find you.
Yeah. And I see that you're passionate about this, and
Yeah,
obviously you loved her, so you're passionate about her.
sure.
So President Obama was real adamant about the Affordable Health Care Act because of
Hmm.
seeing his mother suffer through health issues and not being able to um, obtain the help needed to pay for
Sure.
health care. So one of the things that I've learned through my contacts and paying attention to people who run for office is quite oftentimes their initiatives are those things that are close to their heart. Those initiatives,
Hmm.
their initiatives rather, sometimes are things that either themselves or their loved ones, friends, family, whoever, associates have experienced, and their eyes were opened to
Hmm.
what may be lacking in government in some way, shape, or form. And so, them seeing what was lacking in government, again, they either seek someone else to
Sure.
solve the problem,
Hmm.
or they decide that
Yeah.
there's nobody else willing to step up.
Well,
So, therefore, I'm going to step up and I'm trying to bring a solution to that problem.
sure. Now, in this instance, this legislation is already in committee
Hmm.
in both the state house and the state senate. It just hasn't moved out of committee. It hasn't moved to the floor. I say and I did reach out to Representative Hill Evans, and I told her, because she's one of the primary sponsors in the House. And
Okay.
I said, you know, if you need, if you need somebody to come and sit before the committee and tell their story, I would be happy to do that at any time. Um,
So yeah, but as a state legislator, you can tell that story because
Absolutely.
you're there right in the midst of them, and if you
Sure.
can join that
Sure.
committee, because as was explained, that initiative, I don't know if you know the bill number, but so when legislators want to put forth an initiative, then they'll write a law. It becomes, set as a bill number,
Hmm.
and then other ones sign on to that bill, but it goes into a particular committee, and then the people in charge of that committee have to put it on the floor, put it up for a vote. So if the people who are in charge of that committee kind of want to let that bill die, then they never put it up for a vote in the committee. And if the committee never votes on it, then it never goes to the general House floor. So
Hmm.
first it has to pass through a committee or fail. If it fails, it doesn't go to the House floor. But if it goes once it goes through the committee, then it goes to the House floor for a total vote. So that's how sometimes bills are killed by never
Hmm.
being brought first through the committee for a vote and then to the general house floor for a vote. And sometimes proponents, if they believe they don't have enough votes to make it to let it pass, then they won't present it for a vote as well.
Right.
So sometimes legislators, they'll talk to one another and they'll count their votes, and if they don't have enough votes, then they'll try to push it off to the side because they don't want it to fail
Right.
either.
And I certainly understand that. The thing is, I think if anybody if anybody were in this, has been in this situation with, with a parent, with a spouse, with a, and we already said it has to be an adult, but an adult child. Let's say you're 50, 60 years old, and your adult child, 25, 30, has terminal cancer. You know, if that were something that they were asking for, I don't know how a parent would turn a blind eye to that. It's just it's just I don't know.
And I don't myself know anything about that particular bill,
Hmm.
but a thought that came to mind also is what we're dealing with sometimes with young people
Hmm.
is this sense of hopelessness, helplessness, and we're in depression of not in their perspective at least now, or of not being able to navigate the cost of living in this world as maybe their parents or grandparents navigated it, so they look to unalive themselves. And so that
Yeah,
is where I guess I would have some concern
sure.
of how do you make it. I do understand the terminal life conditions and the
Hmm.
pain associated with the terminal life conditions that a person may, just as you said, they may want to choose death with dignity.
Right.
So, how do you, I
Prevent
guess,
misuse.
prevent misuse, prevent a young person who may not be suffering that per se, but at least in their minds, they are suffering something that is of a high level to them. That
Hmm.
perhaps if they just live through it another day, another week, another
Sure.
month, if you just live through it, it's going to pass. So,
That's
how do you offer protections? I would say is protections
right.
against someone who is being premature and thinking to unalive themselves.
Yeah, that's. I mean, to me, that's the central feature of the fact that you need both a medical finding and a psychological finding. You need to have a psychologist say
Mm-hmm.
that they are of sound mind, and you need a medical doctor to say that they are terminal in the short term, less than 6 months. So if somebody is just depressed and say they can't go on, that might, the psychologist there would, might say, well, they are of sound mind. They are of sound mind. They just have concluded that they cannot go on. But the medical doctors should be stepping in at that point and saying, I'm sorry, but they're not terminal.
Okay.
Uh, or vice versa. If somebody is chronically ill and is definitely terminal, but they're not of sound mind, they cannot make that decision, and no one is empowered to make that decision for them. It's not something that can be handled by a power of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it has to be it has to be that person found of sound mind.
There's medical health care directives.
Yes.
So with the medical health care directive, it's almost like a power of attorney where
Hmm.
you designate a person to be able to make those decisions for you when you are no longer of sound mind, and you may have already checked off some
Right.
things you do or don't want, whether you want to be on life support,
Right.
etc. So would something like that be added to a healthcare directive?
I if in my mind I'd have trouble foreseeing under what circumstances that
Okay.
might be pulled in. If somebody, because usually those healthcare directives are when someone can no longer
Right.
make those decisions on their own,
Right.
which which would which would basically take off the table, if either they're not of sound mind
Mm-hmm.
or they can't self ingest medications.
Okay.
They just I I think those are important safeguards to have there.
Okay.
Um, but that said, I do have both my wife and I do have
Mm-hmm.
medical power of attorney and
Great.
and advanced directives
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of thing. So
Yes.
you know you never know how you never know how it's going to end. It's not like a ride at Disney World where you know how it ends. You just get off and go back out to the main
Park.
street. It's you know
Yes. Okay.
yeah.
So, are those have we? I want to make sure you've explained all of your
Those are
initiatives.
those are the three
Okay.
initiatives, and I've stated those
Mm-hmm.
in a couple of different Democratic forums when I've
Yeah.
had speaking opportunities to talk about specific things. I know in a lot of rally or dinner or event situations, a lot of political stump speeches, talk in very general terms about
Right.
what people want to do, the things they're willing to work on, the things they're willing to fight for, and most most of the stump speeches I've heard are not as specific as I have been on those three topics. But I think if when we go back to, would I be willing to step down after less than 3 terms? Absolutely. If I had those three things done, I had somebody responsible coming up to say, you know what, I want that seat. I'll run for that seat. I mean, I've got my eye on a couple of people that I would like to run for this seat. If I'm unsuccessful, I'd like them to run next year.
Mm.
If they don't, I find it hard to say I would allow it to go uncontested.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So all of these races, you can't make a change unless you contest them. So
That's
you have
exactly
to.
right.
So with everybody out there talking about there needs to be change or something else, you're not being heard in one way or another. Again, you have to help somebody run or run yourself. So that's definite. So I wanted to talk more about taxation.
Okay.
So again, you did speak about the commercial property that's blighted, but more so to the fact of many family, older adults, seasoned citizens
Hmm.
are concerned about maintaining their homes, and their
Hmm.
home may be paid off. The only other thing left to continue to pay are taxes.
Right.
So, what type of relief do you foresee advocating for?
Well, I get this when I'm out canvassing. I talk to senior citizens, and they're concerned about how their school taxes, specifically school taxes, how school taxes have risen over the
Mhm.
years, and they say I'm paying more in school taxes now than I ever paid on my mortgage, and I don't know how I'm going to continue to pay it. Um, the first thing I would say is I even in the event of personal bankruptcy, I don't believe they can take your primary residence. So if people cannot pay their tax bills, they should be able to stay where they are. And if I am wrong on that, then the legislation should be out there to allow them to stay in their personal residence. And if the school district needs to, put a lien on the house and increase that lien for taxes every year until the citizen passes, the house is vacant. The school district then forecloses on the house, collects their taxes. The balance goes to the end of the estate. Um,
So, I actually had an experience representing someone
mhm.
who was late on their taxes for their residents. And so for the tax claim bureau, they give you notice that your property, it could be commercial or
Hmm.
residential, would be up for sheriff's sale for lack of payment. And they normally give you a deadline of saying this is the date of the sheriff's sale. So sometimes, as I know, people who fall behind on their taxes, they'll use that as the drop dead date to pay.
Hmm.
And I don't have it here, I'll look it up, but there's a particular law, and I was very surprised about it. There's a particular law in the state that allows a third party to swoop in and pay those taxes. And now you, even before that deadline, and now they can sue you because they paid your taxes. So now you're facing owing a third party, and you can lose your property because someone else paid your debt and now they're suing you. And if you have they can collect on your property by putting a lien or otherwise, and you can potentially lose your residence through a sheriff's sale. Now, you may have protections under bankruptcy, but you would have to file bankruptcy. And some people may not want to do that, to file bankruptcy. So that's, and I'll look
Yeah.
that up because of what particular law that is that allows a third party, but it came to mind when you were speaking about that,
Sure.
that allows a third party to come and pay your taxes, and now you owe that third party when you had every plan and had the opportunity because you hadn't reached the deadline
Hmm.
yet to pay the taxes yourself.
Sure.
So that is one issue that I think would need to be changed, and I'm gonna be reminded to talk to the state representatives that I know
Hmm.
to look into that. But yeah,
If
the state will take your property, or municipality will take your property if you owe taxes and you by sheriff's sale. If you have not paid or made arrangements. Now, I do know you can also make payment arrangements by the deadline. You have to pay at least, I think you have to pay at least a year if you are back 2 years. I think you cannot owe 2 years or more.
Okay.
So you have to pay that, at least that back, to take you under 2 years, and then make a payment arrangement. You can lose your residential property by inaction, or not paying by the deadline, or not filing for bankruptcy.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And there are certainly
Hmm.
other options out there. If you do have a home that is paid off, you could go for a reverse mortgage,
Right.
which basically puts money back in your pocket that can help to address some of the shortfalls.
Right. So some of that as well, you have to know, and it all depends. If you are a person who does not have heirs, or are not concerned
Hmm.
with leaving your home to those heirs, then you can do a reverse mortgage,
Sure.
because that's no longer going to be available to your heirs if you do a reverse mortgage.
Right.
So sometimes, people, that's your home can be a way to share generational wealth with your heirs. But again, if you do something like a reverse mortgage, you no longer will have that property to give to your heirs.
Right. You just
Yes.
have whatever money was left in the estate after you
Yeah, just
satisfy your other
right,
obligations.
right.
Yeah.
So I guess just the main point is, as a state legislator, would you be sensitive to those issues to look to how to make the laws more favorable
Yeah.
for the owner, the residential owner?
I think there are very few people that want to throw the elderly out of their home
Hmm.
just because they have not paid their school taxes
Yeah.
or their municipal taxes. I think most people would be willing to work with that.
Hmm.
Most municipalities would say, okay, well, nobody lives forever. And if we can just put liens on the property
Hmm.
and we can be satisfied when that person passes, we're first in line
Hmm.
before their heirs are paid, before the estate gets anything else. We can sell the property, we can satisfy those liens, and what's left goes back into the estate.
Yeah, I think that may be something to look at to change. I don't believe it's how it currently is,
Okay.
however. But
Not I have
yeah.
no expertise in bankruptcy law
Well,
whatever.
I don't do bankruptcy law either, but I do know in reference to the sheriff's sale because I've known people who bought properties and
Hmm.
then they're trying to kick out the resident. And I know people who were a resident and they actually had that particular
Yeah.
example I gave you. Whereas they intended to pay before the sheriff's sale and somebody came in and swooped up and paid and say, hey, I'm suing you for your home or not paying your taxes before the deadline. So, well, even though it was before the deadline. So, or how about small business development? What how would you use your position once you win it to assist small businesses?
Well, I think until a business is actually an ongoing business is profitable, there is virtually no tax burden. You can't tax sweat.
Mhm.
You can't tax hard work. You can only tax assets and revenues, profits. So in terms of incentivizing small business,
Mhm.
I think the first thing to say is we want you to succeed. If you can make some sort of small grants available for people
Mhm.
to start a business, and they can work through the Small Business Administration, which is a federal thing, but there's also small business at the state level.
Mhm.
Um, but from what I've seen, small businesses usually somebody looks at the market and sees that there's a need that is not being met. They believe they have the skills, the talent, and the energy to meet that need, and they engage on it. And I don't think it's I don't think the business the I don't think the state needs to be in the business of urging people to go into business, but I think
Mhm.
they do need to facilitate it if they come to them and say, look, I want to buy this property,
Mhm.
that's on the market, but I don't have enough money. Well, people nobody pays cash for a house. You
Mhm.
take a mortgage,
Mhm.
or unless you're moving from one to another. But generally speaking, people take out mortgages. So, you need to have a stable mortgage market. You need to have, I say, it'd be nice for interest rates to come down. They are coming down, but it'll be a while before they get down to the 3% range.
Mhm.
It's going to be a while for that. Um, but I think it's important that the state is encouraging about small business, but I think it's always going to be based on the initiative of the original creator.
Well, I know there are, say, small making access to startup capital.
Hmm.
There's, say, employment with the state or say contracting with the states, whereas opening that up and making it feasible for small businesses to do.
Hmm.
So would you be amenable to any of those things?
Absolutely, but I think
Okay.
that I do think the state's going to be very slow to contract with a business that is not an ongoing business. If the state wants something supplied over the course of the next
Mm-hmm.
fiscal year, they're going to want to see that the
Mm-hmm.
business can meet those commitments. So they're going to need to see a history. It's like,
Right. Yeah. When I
yeah,
said startup capital, that was one, and
yeah,
then another is to diversify the state's contracts. You
hmm
know what I mean?
hmm I
To
do.
for to make them competitive to for small businesses.
Yes,
Because when you diversify in that way to allow small businesses to compete for state business,
absolutely.
you're going to really affect a lot of households. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
Um, and again, I would say that you would probably positively affect a lot of multicultural people,
Absolutely.
than
Yep.
just contracting with the very large conglomerates. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So,
Yep.
so that's why I do think it's important for the state to be willing to contract, to give their contract to small businesses.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The other thing is, and I'll take Carol Hill Evans because she's already a representative. So what I see her doing, and where I see a legislator have the opportunity to do, is they learn of various initiatives like grants.
Yes.
And so if you have a community that you serve as a legislator, and you know the businesses who are in your district,
Right.
and you say you can, if you're having and building a relationship with the community in your district that includes businesses, and you learn of a grant or something
Mm-hmm.
that would be conducive for their business, then would you make that available? Would you share that knowledge with the
Absolutely. Yeah.
community
I
that
think
you're
it's
serving? And
sure. I think
okay,
it's important to important to interact with the greater community. Every the constituents in the district put out a if you put out a say a quarterly newsletter to say this is what's going on in the 47th district.
right.
These are grants that are available, whether it's on a district basis or a statewide basis. These are the grants that are available, and if if you want to come into the office and talk about, you know, like I say, how you know you've got to have something going on first. It's not just somebody coming in off the street and says, "Hey, I'd like to start a I don't know, I'd I'd like to start an auto repair business, and I want to start by repairing state vehicles."
Oh yeah, that's
You
that's
know,
a
that's
definite distinction. Of
yeah,
course,
yeah. You've
you.
got to you've got to have some level of a track record.
The other
Yeah.
thing that I've seen offered is, by other legislators that I know, is the how tos.
Mhm.
So this is what the state offers, and this is how to qualify.
Yes.
This is how to apply. You know, you and taking it off of business, you want to build up home ownership.
Hmm.
And so this is how you do that. This is how you improve your credit. And really
Right.
improving the credit could be for businesses as well. But
Yes.
so do you see that as, one of your initiatives is to sort of educate the community in these things that run across your desk, or even there may be something that you learn from the community of how to be employable.
I think
So,
there's a I think there's a basic level of education that should be part of in the K to 12 system. You know, students before they get out of high school, they should understand the risks of easy credit. They should understand the importance of establishing savings, of establishing a personal budget, a family budget, of setting goals, setting priorities. And I know when I was younger, I was taught the Andrew Carnegie theory, which was as quickly as possible. You make sacrifices, but try to save a year's salary, and then after that, save 10% of everything you own, or of all your gross income. Save 10% right off the top. You don't touch it; it goes right into a savings account, and yeah, and then someday you'll say, well, I need that money to buy my first house. Okay, that's when you tap it. But you're investing in the future, and I think I think it's children today see parents stick a card in a wall and it spits money out at them, and they don't understand how that money got in the bank in the first place. They don't understand a lot of things. They sign up for credit cards and they think by paying the minimum balance they're doing okay, and they're signing up for what used to be usurious interest rates.
right.
But they're signing up for interest rates of 25 to 30% now, which is just crazy. Um, you shouldn't be using short-term, your long-term money to pay for short-term needs.
Right.
Don't put your groceries on a credit card if if you're not paying off that credit card every month. So
So would you, as a state legislator, and again, you're a state legislator who has to go up to Harrisburg every so often,
sure,
and you vote on multiple bills and introduce multiple bills.
right,
But then there's times you come back to the community and
sure,
you're dealing with the everyday, can you help me with this?
right,
And you'll get sometimes, can you help me pay my rent? You'll get sometimes, can you help me pay my utilities?
right,
So with that, and yes, some of the education should be K through 12. Some of the education should be within the household, but you may have some constituents who never had that education.
exactly right.
That's because sometimes, again, there may be community organizations
Mm-hmm.
who will send something to your office about trainings they have.
Sure.
Would your offer be a source of information?
Yes, I would see the local office, being able to tap into those programs and say, look, if you have problems paying your heat bill, paying your electric bill, you can go to Columbia Gas, or you can go to the oil company, you can go to the electric company, and you say, these are my issues, and I need to be able to tap. I know you have funds available for people who are low income, can't pay these things. I would like to get signed up for those things. I work with, I our church is involved in a number of hunger relief programs. We do backpacks every week. So kids that get school lunches, city schools and East York Elementary, you know, we're packing bags that go into the school, and on Friday afternoon the kids can take those bags home, so they have food over the weekend, and then they come back on Monday back into the school lunch program. So, you know, we work on that. We do food distribution on a monthly basis at the church and at a church down in Hallam. So, within both churches within the district, both churches within the district. So, I would encourage people to, if that's what you need, if you've already signed up for food stamps and you're still having trouble meeting your bills, then get signed up for these other, ancillary programs, take advantage of them, and do those things. And I'd be happy to sit with people and kind of help them with their menu and say, no, you don't want to buy this, you want to buy that. You want to do more with less, and just to cut your expenses, meet your needs, and continue on in hopes that better days are coming.
So also, I normally ask people who are running of what your staff will look like. So would your staff be a representation of the full community that you serve?
I I I have no idea how big the staff. I know I visited Representative Hill Evans up in Harrisburg for one day. She has one person on her staff. So
She has more than that. She has, because
in the
she has,
Harrisburg office,
I don't know if it's just Harrisburg, but I know she has a staff in York as well. So
yes,
she has more than, yeah,
yeah,
she definitely has more than one person.
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
there may be a legislative assistant or something like that.
yeah,
But yeah, she definitely has more than one person.
yeah. There's one person
Yeah,
in Harrisburg. I don't know what her local
yeah,
staff looks like. I did drop by her office, and there were two people in there at the time. But I would be hiring out of the local community, and
yeah.
with you know whoever's qualified.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look into that, and as well as, multilingual person,
Yeah.
because even in this district for the 47th, you're going to have Spanish speaking people.
Yes.
So, and to be able to serve, the community
Mm-hmm.
as a
Mm-hmm.
whole. So just definitely, I'm always a proponent for people who are looking at that big picture. You know
Sure.
what I mean? So,
Sure.
well, we talked about some of the struggles that people have and may have, and we'll definitely be calling your office for. That's no doubt.
No doubt about it.
So, what would be your position on raising the minimum wage? Right now, 7.25.
Yep.
There have been various bills that are, again, pending for
Mm-hmm.
approval. We need to try to get the Senate to be Democratic so we can pass a minimum wage that's livable in Pennsylvania. So right now we're still trying to get one even through the House.
Sure.
The last bill that I've known about was Representative Patty Kim's in Harrisburg, and she had a 1010.
Mm-hmm.
So Carol Hill Evans spoke yesterday. York NAACP had a forum which you participated in,
Yep. Yep.
but she spoke about a livable wage is around $25 an hour. So, would you support a livable wage, and if so, how much and why?
Well, here's the thing about a minimum wage. I think it, from what I've seen as I go around the district, I've seen ads at McDonald's, at Sheetz, at Rutter's, where they have posted on their door they're looking for people at $12 an hour or something like that. I think much of the market has already gone above the seven and a quarter an hour, and if we were to raise it in stages, you know, I think going from seven and a quarter an hour to $15 an hour, that's a big jump all at once. But if we were to raise it in stages, I think the market is going to stay ahead of that here in York County in the 47th district. Um, if you travel around the state, I think everybody would freely acknowledge a living wage is higher in Philadelphia than it is in York County, and it's higher in York County than it would be in, let's say, Potter or Tioga counties. So setting a statewide minimum wage, it's a good idea. I mean, it's already there. If we moved it up to $10 an hour, which would be a pretty big jump from seven and a quarter an hour, I think, like I say, I think that's lagging the market. It's almost across the state. Um, and
And did you say, I heard you just say something and you may have to repeat it.
sure.
You said if we raised it from seven and a quarter an hour
Mm-hmm.
to what though?
Well, if we raised it to $10 an hour, I think we're still lagging the market throughout this district. I mean, when I drive around and I see McDonald's and I see Rutter's and the help wanted signs never go away.
Mm-hmm.
They're just out there. They cannot get the people at those rates. So
Right.
I'm not saying there aren't people paying seven and a quarter an hour, but anybody who's working at seven and a quarter an hour, if 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 they have any initiative at all, they can probably find a better job or at a higher wage. All they have to do is go down the block. Um,
Well, how about the
um,
things that say the state controls?
mhm.
And because if multiple businesses or the industry is higher than 725, and
Mhm.
that's where the market is, why not? Why doesn't the state, or and would you support the state just raising the minimum wage? That way, the person, whoever it may be, who is at the lowest rung would still be at a higher wage that is going to, as you said, not really be at the highest it should be,
Right.
but it's going to give the person a little bit more opportunity to buy consumer goods and
Mhm.
tackle the cost of living. So, so again, just thinking about what the state controls
Right.
versus the person's initiative. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Would you support as a state legislator raising the minimum wage?
I, if it were to come to the floor, I would vote in favor of it.
Okay.
But like I say, I think we're so far behind right now. That
So we have to do something about it. So if we're so far behind, we have to make a change. So the
right.
way to make a change is for legislators to propose bills and to encourage the people in charge. That we already talked about
Hmm.
committees,
Right.
the chairs of the committees to release bills for vote and then say, this is what I'm willing to vote for. Now, there's some they have, like I did hear you say, well, it should be a gradual thing. Because if the market's already at 12, then, and McDonald's is already advertising with 12, it should be no reason not to start at 12 then, if that's the case. But if the market is, if there's some reason said that the market would fluctuate if it was 12, then what is that next step? And let's jump there. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure. I also think about the person who's just starting off, the 14, 15-year old that has no skills and is looking to go out in the market and get his or her first job. And the higher we push the minimum wage, the more likely that those jobs get automated. You can't walk into McDonald's now and go up to the counter and have somebody say, "Good morning, what can I get for you?" Everything's moved to the kiosk, or almost everything's moved to the kiosk or your cell phone, because McDonald's found it was easier to automate and more profitable to automate those functions than to pay minimum wage, and then the market keeps moving up on McDonald's. So you're going to see more automation. For instance, China has been losing jobs to automation. You know, industry across the state, there are jobs that used to be manual labor and have been moved to automation. So the higher you push the wages, the easier it becomes to automate those jobs and take them out of the marketplace altogether. Um,
So the other
it's a
thing I
it's a
think,
it's a market thing, and I know that might be I know that might go down hard for some people, but it just if you push the wages up, if the state pushes the wages up, there are jobs that won't exist anymore
so,
at the bottom of the labor pool.
but yeah, I think that we definitely need to have people in that's willing to vote to raise the minimum wage, because we people cannot live as it is. So then it has to be a some number discussion as to what the next step is, and why it can't be higher. I don't know that. I mean, I think some of the thought that the companies are going to close. I think some of that has been debunked with, again, you just said
Yeah, yeah,
McDonald's is paying $12 an hour.
sure.
So we can definitely increase it. I started work at 15. And when you think, so I don't think that it's we shouldn't think of 14 and 15-year-olds working as being the ones that should get the 725, because on average, the 14 and 15-year-olds who are going to work
Hmm.
are subsidizing a lack in their household. So the average 14 to 15-year-old is contributing to the household. It may be food, it may
Hmm.
be their own clothing, their own shoes,
Sure.
their own school supplies,
Hmm.
their own prom stuff, their own whatever it is that they have to pay for
Hmm.
school,
Right.
pictures, so, and as I said, so they're still trying to live. They're still
Hmm.
trying to earn enough to be that quote unquote normal teenager that they're going to see the household with means have,
Right.
and experience. And they want to be able to experience going out to the movies, the roller rink, the
Hmm.
whatever else it is, and
Sure.
even to afford a vehicle, not 14, 15, but getting to 16,
Right.
17
Right.
to afford a vehicle. So now they have to pay insurance, they have to pay car registration, they have to pay for gas. So I think we have to still give competitive wage to even the younger folks, because again, I think it, it's not the norm for a 14 to 15-year-old to just be working if they
Hmm.
had the means within their household not to work. You know what I mean? So they have a need if they're working at that age. Because I know that people with means normally tell a 14 to 15-year-old, your work is your education. So yeah, so that's what the average person with means
Hmm.
that I have encountered, and as you know, I haven't encountered everybody, so
Sure.
I know there's some work that
Hmm.
people do try to make sure that you have a skill. So that's another reason. But again, you want to be paid for that skill as well.
Sure. Sure.
For getting that skill. So
Yeah.
that's food for thoughts.
Yeah. That's the
That's
old.
food for thought. So because again, as a state legislator, you're gonna you're gonna have people encounter you and make office hours, and they're
Hmm.
going to say things to you that maybe you have not considered,
Oh, I'm
and,
sure.
and so you're gonna have lobbyists.
Hmm.
You're gonna have people. So lobbyists sometimes who are professional, they're paid,
Of
and
course.
again, somebody who just a crying mom or dad or grandmom who is coming into your office and telling you a story
Hmm.
about their life that you never considered before, and now the whole issue is, are you open to consider it? Are you open to take all that information and reassess your position? And so I think that's the key part.
Sure. Sure. Well, I think that's one of the benefits of being a little bit older than a
Hmm.
lot of first-time politicians. Is I've been through raising a family, and I've been through the stage of telling your children
Hmm.
what you know is best for them
Hmm.
and having them totally disregard that.
Right. Mm. Yeah.
And so an understanding that even the best advice can be unheeded,
Mhm.
but you know still you operate with, I'm here for you. I'm here to work with you. I can give you suggestions, but I cannot tell you, I cannot make you do
No,
the things I
absolutely.
think are in your best interest.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you just have to you have to listen, you have to learn, and you have to be prepared that you might see the exact same person the next week with the exact same problem,
Right.
and you say, I made a suggestion last week, and they say, yeah, that didn't work out. Okay, well, what did you do, and how are you? What else can we do?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's a
Absolutely. Again,
you
I
learn
had,
patience.
yeah,
You to some extent you learn patience as
yeah.
you age, and you realize how many different opportunities that you've let pass by, and you've done the wrong thing,
Absolutely.
and you realize that people are going to learn by making mistakes.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, and sometimes you gave the example, I believe, of saying sometimes you'll give advice to somebody come to your office and
mhm,
they may have said, well, I didn't take it or I didn't do it
right,
or
or I
something
didn't, and
like
it
that.
didn't work like
Right, right,
it
right,
didn't work,
right.
and
For
you
me,
obviously
in
you
that
don't know what you're
way,
talking
right,
about.
exactly.
Well,
So, yeah, those are
yeah, yeah,
things you're going to experience.
sure,
Even myself as an attorney, I experience those things. And sometimes, Carol Hill Evans said this too. Sometimes you'll give advice and say, do A, B, C, and D. You do A, B, C, and D, you'll have success. And they'll say, that's too much.
yeah, they might.
So yeah, there's different things that you're going to encounter, and sometimes you just got to have the hard talks with those people, So,
Hmm.
but I also go into a different topic. Well, different topic because you mentioned that some things should be taught K through 12.
Sure.
So, how would you increase quality education and accessibility to quality education in your district once you're elected?
Hmm. Well, I think certainly when I've knocked on
Mm-hmm.
doors and talked to teachers
Mm-hmm.
and talked to people, when they say they're educators, I don't know for sure if they're teachers or if they're just in the education system. They might be administrators. Either way, though, um, I know one of their big concerns is that their work has become more difficult because their work is being politicized, and especially the ones that are not in the STEM curriculum. You
Mm-hmm.
know, science, technology. They can maybe walk away a little bit from the political side of things, um, although not entirely, um, because as a graduate of Dover High School, I know what went on there with the whole intelligent design lawsuit,
Yes.
and that came down through the science curriculum.
So would you have supported or been against the intelligent design?
I certainly would not have supported including that in the science curriculum. If you wanted to talk about that as philosophy,
Okay.
as fantasy,
Okay.
as whatever, but I think I think the science is pretty well established that, you know, and and I know that the district, it cost the district over $1 million in fees, you know, to settle that whole thing. I think that the district needs to stay out of those waters, and the school board needs to focus on educating the children without, you know, without prejudice, without, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We need to back up and let the teachers do their jobs.
Well,
You know, the
in backing up and letting the teachers do their jobs and educating without prejudice, um, should the schools teach history, United States history,
absolutely we
good,
should
bad, and
teach.
ugly?
Absolutely, we should teach United States history, and including, you know, the radical theory that maybe slavery was not a good idea. Uh, we should,
Radical.
yeah, we should be teaching that.
Yes.
You know,
And not even maybe.
yeah, not even maybe.
No.
I said that tongue in cheek. I
Yes.
think everybody
Yeah,
listening
yeah,
can tell
yeah.
that. But,
Yeah, I
you
do,
know,
but
I know
yeah.
we, you know, I know that my opponent has, you know, one of his big concerns, and, you know, in the whole push for school choice
Hmm.
is to get away from, you know, the teaching of critical race theory and its
Right.
tributaries. And like I say, I've done as much homework as I can without being in school myself. We don't teach critical race theory
Right.
in K to 12.
Right.
It is a
That's
higher
law
level
school
class.
theory. Yes.
You know, when he talks about
Hmm.
tributaries, I believe I know what he's referring to. You know, but, you know, when we teach students to respect differences, you know, and to, you know, to not be bullying people because they're different, to respect, you know, differences. You know, if somebody's got two dads or two moms, or, you know, is, you know, the child of a single parent, you know, if we're teaching people to respect one another and not bully them, and anybody wants to call that a tributary to critical race theory, I think, oh, come on. You know, can we not be, at the very least, can we not respect differences?
Right.
And, you know, if you don't approve of the way someone's living their life, you're entitled to your opinion,
Right.
but you're not entitled to tell them they're wrong and make them feel bad about their personal choices.
Yeah,
So
that
that's, you know, to me,
absolutely.
that's like that's part of education. I mean, education, the state has found that we are underfunding public
Yes.
schools.
Hmm.
And it happened years ago where the state used to supply more than 50% of the funding
Hmm.
to our public schools in Pennsylvania. It had fallen to less than 30%. And the Supreme Court of the state of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, said, you need to do better. And we are doing better. We're working the fair funding. We've
Right.
increased the amount of money going to public K to 12 districts
Hmm.
in the last legislative session. We put more money out there, and it's coming out of the rainy day fund. It's not coming out of new taxes. But
Right.
the rainy day fund is going to be depleted at that rate. The rainy day fund will be depleted in 4 or 5 years.
Right.
So it's going to have to come from somewhere.
Right.
They haven't allocated it any differently. So, you know, as far as I know, the next year or two, it might be coming out of the rainy day fund, but they can only tap that for about 4 years, and then the rainy day fund will be down to nothing, and they're going to have to do something
So
different, better.
in July 2024, for the budget that included millions of dollars and actually
Mm-hmm.
billions of dollars going into education statewide,
Right.
but millions of dollars coming into York County, all the York County, except for Carol Hill Evans, all the York County representatives voted against it. So, would you have voted for or against such a budget bringing millions of dollars to your county and billions to Pennsylvania to improve the education system?
I would absolutely have voted in favor of it. Yes, without a doubt.
And I think you mentioned school choice and or vouchers. What's your position on it?
My position on school vouchers are that public tax dollars should go to public schools. If a family wants to take their children and pull them out and put them in private school, parochial school, they have the right to do that, but they don't have the right to take their tax dollars with them any more than I have the right as someone who has no students in K to 12 schools.
Right.
All my kids, my son is 40. He's not in school anymore. I don't have the right to say, well, you can't have my money to your public school.
Mm.
I wanted to go to the fire department, or I wanted to
Right.
go to the library, or I wanted to go to the police department. I don't have that right, and nowhere, in my opinion, do they. When they talk about taking well, the cost of the average cost of education of my student is $16,000 or something like that. That's fine. If you take one student out of the public school,
Mm-hmm.
you don't change your budget for buildings. You don't change the amount of money you pay your superintendent. You don't pay all these administrative things that exist. They don't change a whit because you've pulled one student out of school.
Right.
And you can't get rid of a tenth or a 30th of a teacher out of the classroom. So all those costs are still there. The incremental cost of moving one student is, if the student gets free lunches and breakfast and lunches, there's that cost.
Mm-hmm.
If you're buying curriculum, there's that cost. And if that curriculum is used over a period of years, then you ought to spread that cost out. Apart from that, the cost of moving one person out of the school district is probably less than $1,000 in terms of the costs that you're actually avoiding, or the costs that can be reduced when you pull one student out.
Right.
So, and nobody's asking for $1,000. They're asking for $8,000, $7,000, $8,000, $14,000. They're asking for way more than that,
Right.
to move their child to public school, from public school to a private school.
Mm-hmm.
And by and large, the people who are doing that have already made the decision. They're already sending their kid to private school.
Right.
So what they're asking for is welfare for the middle and upper class.
Mm.
That's my opinion.
While decreasing public assistance, i.e., welfare for those who are economically disadvantaged.
Yes. My opponent voted in favor of moving money out of the public school system,
Mm-hmm.
and it would have cost, between Central York, Eastern York, and Northeastern, it would have cost those districts a total of $2 million per year.
Mm.
He voted in favor of that in the last legislative session. And he sees no problem with that.
Right. And you do.
I do.
Absolutely.
I say, when I was a kid, kid down the block went to Catholic school. You know what? The parents paid for it.
Right.
And the Catholic school had money available in a scholarship program for kids whose families couldn't afford it.
Right.
Yeah, that was part of their operation as a parochial school.
Right.
They wanted to educate. It was Catholic. It was York Catholic. They wanted to educate their kids in the Catholic religion,
Mm-hmm.
and that was fine. And if Catholic kids go to the school and their parents can't afford it, somewhere the money comes from.
And I want to make sure that people understand this point. You have faith. You're a religious person, right?
Sure.
You was talking about your church.
I talk about my church. I won't say what church.
That's okay.
Because my church we're very specific in saying we don't do politics at church.
Right.
We do religion.
Right. And because I also have faith, a person of faith, and I say the same things as the reason I support some of these initiatives that are under the Democratic Party, but yet maintain my faith, is I use a word that you used earlier, that I recognize what a person is doing is their personal choice.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I say is that's what God gave us.
Yes,
God gave us personal choice. Now he says, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, but choose.
absolutely.
So
Yep.
I don't believe also, as I think I heard you say, the government should be getting involved in our choices or mandating our behavior. You know what I mean? So that is that's the distinction
Sure.
that I make
Yeah.
in my faith, is
Right.
that I don't want the government mandating behavior, because they're going after them today, and when are they going to come after us next? So that's exactly why I say the government should be out of that, any of that.
Sure. That
And
goes back to the Establishment Clause of the of
yeah,
the of the U.S. Constitution. The United States will make no laws that establish a religion or go against the practice of a religion.
right.
Everybody is free to practice his or her religion as he or she or they feel appropriate.
Absolutely. And
And
let their relationship be with God, however that
absolutely,
may be. You
however
know what I
that
mean?
is.
So yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when I heard you say that, I wanted to
Yeah.
make a point to bring that out, because
Hmm.
a lot of times people have the misinformation or idea that you must only be Republican to have faith. You know what I mean? Or to
Yeah.
support some of these initiatives. And
Right.
if you support it, then you don't have faith. So I always do try to speak on that part, that I very
Hmm.
much have faith. You know what I mean? So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it really is because of my faith that I get involved in fighting against the governmental intrusions in those way.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
but we've been talking for a while now.
We have.
So
Yep.
I want to go into a lightning round.
Okay.
And for
Lightning round.
conclusion, yes.
Sure.
Now what I'm going to speak about, these are pending bills that
Okay.
if you're elected that you may face.
All
Okay.
right. Pending bills. Got it.
Yes, yes. So I'm going to generally just generally ask you about it, not necessarily talk about the bill number or all of that.
Okay.
But this is to open government. However, would you vote for or against requiring constitutional amendments to be presented only during general elections? So that's every 2 years,
Mhm.
when there's a presidential or governor election. So only during the general, not the primary, and only when it's a presidential or governor election, for constitutional amendments to be presented.
Constitutional amendments to the
Yes.
state constitution.
Yes. So
Okay.
what they do is they
Mhm.
put constitutional amendments on the ballot.
Right.
So this initiative is to say you will not put constitutional amendments on what's called the quote unquote off
Off
years
years. Right.
and during the primary where less people vote.
Well,
So
that plus in the primary.
right.
Let me. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I would favor that
All right.
because first off, I was independent for 8 years.
Right.
I was not permitted to vote in the
That's
primary
correct.
unless there was a constitutional issue on the ballot.
Okay.
Referendum. I could vote for referendum,
Right.
but getting that message out there to
Absolutely.
say there's a referendum on the ballot and you all need to show up, well, that's just it, that's just basically trying to sneak one through,
Right.
in
Right.
my opinion.
I
If you do
understand.
it, if you do it in the prime year elections, even years, basically, 22, 24, 26, when there's either governor on the ballot or president on the ballot, that's when you're going to get your most turnout, and that's the fairest thing to do in terms of getting amendments made. Yes, I support that.
All right. So, reproductive freedoms. Would you or would you not support insurance coverage for all contraceptive services, regardless of income?
Yes.
LGBTQIA rights. Currently, Pennsylvania law defines marriage as between a man and a woman. Would you be for or against redefining marriage to remove between a man and a woman?
Yes, and I can't believe that hasn't been done yet. I thought the Supreme Court decisions had already put that one in the rearview mirror.
So
already legalized, you know, lesbian and homosexual marriages nationally.
that's correct. In 2015, the United States Supreme Court did declare laws like that unconstitutional.
Under the due process. Yeah.
Pennsylvania still hasn't changed it, however.
Well, maybe we need to get with the now.
Would you be for or against expanding the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission Discrimination Act to include discrimination for sexual orientation and gender identity and expression?
I would favor that, yes.
Do you believe that immigrants deserve rights?
Well, yesterday I spent 5 hours downtown at the New American Welcome Center helping Haitians fill out their forms to get work permits and TPS status. So, yeah, I believe that we are a nation of immigrants, and we need to support legal immigration for people who have come here undocumented. If they are in the asylum system, great. If DACA, dreamers,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the responsible thing to do to not punish the child for actions that their parents took that they had no control over. If they were raised in the United States and they have had every reason to believe that you know, they had every right to be here, I don't. I think they should have an expedited path to citizenship. And folks that are crossing the border without asylum, that are here, without documentation, without papers, that's a totally different thing.
Right. So, Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission currently excludes agricultural and domestic workers from being protected against employment discrimination. Would you be for or against a law that includes or adds agricultural and domestic workers to be protected against employment discrimination?
I would see no reason to oppose it.
Would you be for or against qualified non citizens with valid visas for being certified as teachers?
I would favor that, sure.
Okay. Would you be for or against passing the Crown Act, which creates a respectful and open world for natural hair?
Natural hair is a topic very close to my very close to my heart. Yeah, yes, I'm familiar with the Crown Act and how it's been abused in some locations. It's just
Yeah.
or how the lack of the Crown Act or how people disrespect the Crown
Right.
Act that's already been passed.
Right. So people
Yeah,
like myself who
yeah, yeah.
wear my hair sometimes in what's called a bush or fro, or now I have braids. I'll have my hair in so many different ways. And especially when it's a fro, sometimes they think that's quote unquote unprofessional. So that's why we need the protections of the Crown Act. So that's
People need to get over that.
right. And that's another thing, except for Carol Ho Evans, the other York County legislators voted against the Crown Act. So, which is amazing that, is we can't have
they're
protections for our
they're
hair.
voting in favor of bias and
Yeah,
bigotry.
I would say.
It's just again, aren't there things that are more important to talk about, more important to work on?
Would you be for or against helping formerly incarcerated persons transition to the community, so go from prison to the community,
Hmm.
by helping them obtain a driver's license, ID, and work permits?
I'm in favor of that. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you be for or against the Clean Slate 3.0, where drug felonies and property related felonies would be eligible for criminal record sealing?
I think I think if people have committed crimes against property, if people have, if it's, and let me make a break here between marijuana and hard drugs. If somebody's been dealing heroin, if somebody's been trafficking fentanyl, if somebody has been, trafficking cocaine, we should not be expunging those. They should be staying on the books because you need to know about those offenses, and if they're repeat offenders, they need to be treated as repeat offenders. The same thing with property crimes. It's just, yeah. But I know I spoke last night at the NAACP event about expunging convictions for felony convictions for marijuana use. I think, marijuana use is recreational marijuana is legal in, I think, every state surrounding the Commonwealth, and medical marijuana, the the restrictions on that are so blah that anybody who wants a medical marijuana card in Pennsylvania can probably get one. So let's take those felony convictions off of people's records.
Well, the other thing is, so your vote would be a no on the Clean Slate 3.0
It
currently.
would be.
However, the community advocates such as myself will continue to speak to you about the reason for this bill is to help people to become employable and to help solve that worker shortage that you talked about with all of these.
Yeah.
Because right now we need to change. If a president, if a candidate can run for president with felonies, then we should be able to make other people, everyday people, employable, even though they had a felony in the past.
Well, that's
So,
that's fine.
yes, right.
We had a person when I worked at Starbucks. We had a person who was a temp, and we had an opening, full time opening, and she applied for the job, and she said right up front, she said, "But I have a felony conviction." And we asked what it was about. She was packing coffee from bags into boxes.
Right. It needs to be
You know,
related to the job.
right, and it
Exactly.
had absolutely nothing. And we hired her,
So, same with those
and
drug
yeah,
felonies.
but it
Yeah.
was
Right.
it was on her record, and
Right.
it should stay on her record because if people escalate, it doesn't do any good to take them into court and when you can't look at their history and say, oh, they have a record of breaking and entering, they have a record of of larceny, they have a record of I think you need
You
to,
said they have a record of.
if people have a record of property crimes, drug offenses,
Hmm.
I think it needs to stay on their record. And employers, can say, okay, we're not going to let them handle money because they've already been convicted of embezzlement. We're not going to let them do this because we're not going to let them out of our location to be in the field doing, say, a plumbing installation in somebody's house because we've already had a record of them being breaking and entering and burglary. We're not going to do that,
Hmm.
but they can work in the shop, and they can do this and they can do that. But I think it's smart to keep those things on the record.
Okay, would you be for or against a bill that confirms to the magisterial district justices that they can allow community service in lieu of fines?
I would support that.
Would you be for or against abolishing the death penalty?
I would absolutely support that.
Ed, do you have something closing that you want to say to the people?
Um, Only that I was born and raised in York County. I was a Republican for 40 years. I've been independent for 8 years. I am a Democrat now because I watched the Republican Party go farther and farther to the right, and I just I just don't recognize what it is they stand for anymore. So that's why I'm running as a Democrat. Um, I'm running as a middle of the road Democrat to take care of people. You know, take care of people in the district and take care of things in Pennsylvania in general. I say I'm not hard left and I'm not hard right. So that's where I am. Feel free to check out my website, my Facebook page, Pladsylvania.
This has been Sadoc with Sandra, Season 1, Episode 5. Straight Talk with Ed Ritter, candidate for the 47th House District. He's a former engineer. He gave honest insights and solutions for all of Pennsylvania. And remember, your mind is a weapon. When you pursue education and aim for elevation and channel your creativity into empowerment, then no door can hold you and no one can stop you. Your mouth is a weapon that can slay your doubts and insecurities. Speak life to yourself.
Need this nugget of encouragement. Things will be alright, so quit your worrying. I get it. The odds seem stacked back against the wall, but even consider it such, no, you'll stand tall. Sat and watch from the sidelines one too many times. Wicked games to play make me wanna lose my mind. Found solitude, knowing it'll be over soon. Ever need a boost? Count on me for the 1-2. Trouble don't last when the tough get going. Baby, all we do is win, so show me my opponent. Adversity, doubt, stress, could care less, cause how we handle those like an S on our chest.